What's up everyone, my name is Matt, and welcome back to Controlled Chaos Gaming. Today I'm going to be giving my Portland Regionals recap. This is the Rapid Strike box list that I played. Some notable includes are the 70 HP Remoraid. I did put this in kind of last second, and I think it would have been better just to play two of them, but it's good into things like Iron Valiant and Mirror. We also have 2 copies of Arven in this list. We chose to go 3 VIP Pass and 1 Heavy Ball, because we're blindly choosing to go second because we can use that turn 1 Arven. If we prize something super important like Squawkabilly and we need it, we can get it with the Heavy Ball, and 3 VIP Pass is just fine when you're going second. The rest of my teammates chose to play Cheryl, which I think would have been better for my run, but I chose to play Turo plus the rope that we already had in case I hit any block lacks. My list also runs 2 TM Devos, some lists are running 1. Now let's hop into our tournament report, but not without a quick word from our wonderful sponsors at Kayfabe Cards.
Head on over to Kayfabe Cards in Riverton, Utah for all things tabletop. This store is home to Pokemon, One Piece, Flesh and Blood, and more, selling both singles and sealed product in-store and online. You'll find their massive assortment of Pokemon plushies, sleeves, deck boxes, and other staple products. So what are you waiting for? Head on over to Kayfabe Cards. We'll see you there.
We finished 4-3-2, not great. We did bubble top 5-12 as well, so that was pretty disappointing. But yeah, we finished 4-3-2. So round 1, I went up against Raven Brown. She's from Utah, so we've played each other at a couple of those 1Ks and cups and so on. This was really funny. So she was wearing a custom-made sweatshirt with the league leader at Game Grid. His name's Eric. With just his face on it, him holding his champion mat after he won a cup. And she told me that there are like 6 other people wearing the same sweatshirt, but Eric has no clue that they were doing that. So that was super funny. I'm like, is that Eric on your sweatshirt? when we were setting up. So she was playing Path Miraidon. She had a really spicy Luxray tech in there. Game 1, she just wasn't able to set up very well, and I got my double Urshifus out. He was just able to take repeated knockouts. Game 2 was a little bit more interesting. On her first turn, she opened 3 generators in hand. She only hit 1 energy off of the first 2 generators and then whiffed off of the third. So her energy acceleration wasn't great, but she was able to incorporate her Squawkabilly. She didn't quite get her Mew set up, but she did set up her Luxray V. So as I took a few prizes, she went Iono, Path, Luxray. And she would have taken game 2. I had a lot of outs left in deck to find energy, which is all I needed to do rapid flow for game. And I top deck Vessel, so I was able to get the 2-0 victory there. But that one was very, very close. Round 2, I went up against a matchup I did not expect to see in Single Strike Lugia. This matchup I wouldn't say is an auto loss. It's definitely unfavored because Tyranitar hits for 320 and they play 2 to 3 boss typically, so if you try and get your 2 Inteleon set up, that can be the end of your game pretty quickly. Game 1, I was able to go turn 2 Rapid Flow on both of the Archeops because I assumed it only played 1 V-Guard energy, and she had attached it to her Lugia, so I was like, okay, I can set up for the Rapid Flow play. And she was still just able to get set up. I could not find my Turo, so I guess in this scenario, that's where Lumineon could have been useful to go search for that Turo and not have things damaged in order to get bossed a couple times per game. So she was able to take game 1. And in game 2, once again, I was able to get turn 2 Rapid Flow. But as she had her Lugia set up, I couldn't get everything evolved that I wanted to. And she went, in back-to-back-to-back turns, she went boss, boss, boss. And I would have had a game if she didn't get that third boss. I went Iona to 2, and then she was able to Ultra Ball for Lumineon for the final boss. She actually got to a point where she was 5-0-2 and unfortunately lost 2 win-and-ins. So it was a little bit unfortunate, but Single Strike Lugia, it was popping off. It was doing pretty good. Round 3, I went up against Genesis playing the mirror match. This was super interesting. So you always play around Turo, I would say, in the mirror, not necessarily Cheryl. Even though my team brought Cheryl, Turo was going to be the most common thing. So you can set up Rapid Flow on 2 of their VMAXs, so they can't heal everything off of the board. So that's what I went for. Game 1, it was really, really close, super long. I didn't see any Turo or Cheryl, which it can be pretty hard to dig for. And I was able to squeak out Game 1. I'm not fully sure how the end game played out. But Game 2, they only got one Inteleon out. So I felt pretty safe with just having all of my attackers set up and not really worrying about Turo too much. I'm pretty sure I actually had to discard it earlier in the game. So I was a little bit scared, but we were able to pull that one out. Then I asked my opponent at the end of the game, because I was curious to see how their build was, whether they played Turo or Cheryl, whatever they preferred. And they said they didn't play either. Instead, they wanted to be aggressive, and they played the boss's orders. So it worked out in my favor, because that card is very important in the mirror. I think Game 1, I had to discard my Turo early. Game 2, I was able to use it to heal off an Inteleon pretty quickly. But yeah, they didn't play any healing cards. And that ended up working out in my favor there. So we are 2-1. To note, there was no lunch break, which I was a little surprised to see. Round 4 was against Arvinzard. We had this. So this is back-to-back players from the Toronto area, which is super cool. They knew how to play this matchup for sure. Game 1, I couldn't quite take advantage of them benching out, because what you need to do in this matchup, whether it's Anti-Valiant or Rapid Strike, is keep a bench spot open. Of course, you do need Jirachi down, but keep a bench spot open to where you can bench a Charmander. After I have damaged your other Charizards, because if I go Devo, that's probably just game over. You can't just go Rare Candy into a fresh Zard. Makes it really, really difficult for me to take out all of the Zards unless you bench out. He did bench out, but I just not drawn well at all. So that was a pretty quick Game 1 he was able to take. Game 2 was a lot longer. He didn't bench out this time, so I was a little bit scared, but we were able to pull off the TM Devos, and I was actually pretty far behind for a while, because you just punch different things, and then you go boss, boss, boss. They did burn a boss early, so I was like, okay, if I can bait them to take a 2-prize knockout, or even a 1-prize knockout, this could be okay. They immediately bossed Octillery, and were able to knock it out. It did hinder my setup a little bit, but after a super long Game 2, I was able to pull the second TM Devo for game. And Game 3, there was like 2 minutes on the clock, and we both showed each other that we could just bench out, shook hands, and that was a tie. So to this point, we are 2-1-1, and then round 5, I don't know why it's not on there. We hit another Arvinzard. So the previous round they played against Rahul, they also tied, so they have experience. I'm like, okay, how are they able to pull this off against Urshifu? They probably play an interesting tech. Game 1, I don't see what it is. It was pretty long. They didn't expect the double Devo, so I was able to take advantage of that in a very long Game 1. Game 2, they were able to use the Tool Jammer. So at that point, I had already gotten rid of Escape Rope. So that was a bummer. They were able to take advantage of the fact that I researched away Escape Rope, not expecting anything. And it was really, really difficult to get through their setup. And they were able to just go boss, boss, and whatever they needed for game. And since it was such a long Game 1, weren't able to finish that one. So that was another tie. So at this point, we are 2-1-2. We've got to win out. And at round 6, we hit Brandon playing Lasso and Giratina. They went with it was a mix of a common approach and a not so common approach. So they chose not to bench Comfy at all. They went 3 Giratinas on their bench. They could not find a chorus for 5 turns, and we were able to rapid flow twice, set up damage, and take Game 1. Game 2, they did the same exact thing, but their setup was a lot better. They were just able to do Abyss Seeking and Chorus, and I just wasn't getting the attacks that I needed off. And in Game 2, they also benched Manaphy, so it made it much more difficult for me to spread damage with Rapid Flow. They were able to hinder me just enough to take that one. And then Game 3, it was just all the same. It kind of felt like a blur. I was kind of mentally checked out at that point. As it was 1-1. I expected it to be a tie because the first 2 games, took up maybe 35, 40 minutes or so. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to try my best to get through this and it not be a tie. I would rather have the game finished anyways. And we had discussed a gentleman's, but I told him at the beginning that I wasn't too sure because, points matter. But we'll see if it gets to that point. And they were able to just kind of run me over in game 3. So at that point, I'm just like pretty mentally checked out. I'm out of day 2, not happy with my performance. There were definitely things that I could have done better. But as it happened around 7, I play against an Iron Valiant Rapid Strike deck. And my opponent just popped off every time. Like, all 3 games, I think they had double VIP pass in their opening, which was just absurd. And they were just finding their switch cards as they needed it. I thought because I played Entei Valiant that they played less switch cards because, they have evolutions, they got Rapid Strike Energy, they got Melanies. No, they played 12 switch cards. And game 1 was just an absolute wash. They smoked me for sure. Game 2, I was far behind again. I'm like, all right, well, I'm definitely losing this. But since they played no real healing cards, I was able to punch into an Urshifu, Rapid Flow into it to weaken it, as well as hit their Squawkabilly, and then close out with another Rapid Flow for game. So we were able to take game 2, and now there's, again, 10 minutes on the clock. We're just like, are we seriously going to tie again? But they popped off, double VIP pass. I had a little bit of a slower start, if I'm remembering correctly. And yeah, they were just able to take it because Gale Thrust doing 150. I just couldn't find my Turo. I couldn't find my Turo in this whole set. And I think it was prize game 1, but it wasn't prize game 3. Couldn't find a 4 Seal Stone to go find it. So they were just able to set up enough damage and take that one. So at this point, we are now 2-3-2. 2-3-2. So not feeling good at all. I don't plan on dropping because I'm like, okay, 4-3-2 can get top 5-12. My resistance is pretty bad, so there's a chance I could bubble in or out. But round 8 was a no-show. It says they're playing Turbo Lost Box here, but yeah, it was a no-show, so we got the win there. Honestly, kind of feels bad to be just not playing the game. It's like, I'd rather earn this, But we'll take a win there. And then round 9 was the most fun match of the day, of course. We're both out of it. We're just chilling, having a good time, and it's Palkia, which is pretty unfavored for Rapid Strike, I would say. But this whole match, we were just laughing, talking back and forth, and just throwing. We were just not playing well at all, both of us. Game 1, they didn't play Manaphy or anything. They had a 2-1 Ice Rider line. They couldn't get that set up. They didn't know what they were playing against, so they started, I forget what, and then benched a Spiritomb. So I was able to take advantage of that and Yoga Loop that at some point, and then Rapid Flow for game. But game 2, I'm not remembering how we set up, but the end of the game, I don't think I will ever forget because it was hilarious. They needed to bench out, so they had to bump their Collapse Stadium with a Vacuum, bench out, attack with Palkia for game. So they're like, okay, this is really interesting. I need to Mew for a Vacuum, get the switch, also have Arita for just another basic Pokemon, and then I forget what else. Yeah, so another Palkia V-Star plus a Nest Ball or something else to get another basic Pokemon to finish game 2. And they're like, okay, I don't have it. I don't think I can get to it. So I'm like, all right, I got game in hand. I think I have the Rapid Strike Energy to set up for a Yoga Loop to then go Rapid Flow for game and close this one out. So like, all right, well, I just have to pass with my Mew in the active. I play out my turn thinking that I have the Rapid Strike Energy because I know I had to use Rapid Strike Search to get my Tower of Waters to retreat. I look at my hand, there's no Rapid Strike Energy in it and no way to search it. So I'm like, I told him, I'm like, I totally just threw. I literally just threw this game right after he had actually ended up misplaying. I'll explain that in a moment. So I'm like, all right, you got it, right? So I knock out his Mew. He sends up Suicune, which has 2 retreat cost. He draws for turn, fleet-footed, and then he's like, okay, well, now I drew into Lumineon, so I could go get my boss, but now I don't have a switch card. So that was hilarious. So he has to pass, then I'm able to take it, and then right after, as I'm playing my turn, he says, wait a second. I did have Nest Ball in deck. I could have just Arita for my Palkia and Nest Ball. So he had game and then just completely missed it. And then that following turn I had thrown because I thought that I had my Rapid Strike energy and I am for game, which I didn't. But we were able to close that one out. That was just, we were both just laughing about it at the end. Like, man, this is what happens in round 9 when you're both out. So I've got hopes that, I can get into top 512, get some championship points, and we bubble out. So that was super unfortunate. So I guess tournament lessons for me are what I should have done. I 100% should have played Entei Iron Valiant. I've put like 300 some odd games into that deck at this point, and that's just leading up to Portland. That deck I won an online tournament with. That was a Thursday. Saturday was a cup, and I won with Entei Valiant. And then we had a challenge on Tuesday, and I won it with Entei Valiant. So I'm like, okay, this is locals. It could be a little bit different. There's like variants and stuff like that goes into it sometimes. So I'm feeling like leading up to the tournament that Rapid Strike is just going to do what Entei Valiant's trying to do a little bit better. Which, in a way, it's true, I would say. But I just had way less experience with the deck and knowing the ins and outs of it. I think the most disappointing thing for me is other than Single Strike Lugia, there are no real bad matchups on this. Like, really bad matchups. So the ones I wanted to avoid were Blocklax, Mew of any kind. We didn't play Spiritomb. We're just like, YOLO, we're not hitting Mew. Didn't play any Mews. And Roaring Moon. I didn't hit any of those. This day 1 is lined up for me to be very successful. And I screwed it up. I failed. My lack of experience with the deck really came back to bite me. I could have played these games so much better. And even if it's just a small sequencing mistake, it can just end up costing you the game. Let's talk about Entei. The reason I should have played it is not because it's a better deck. Entei Valiant is a super mid deck. I will tell you that. But I put so many games into that I got very good at it. I got very, very good at it. That's why I was winning these tournaments. It wasn't just a fluke. I felt like I had a little bit of imposter syndrome there. But it really wasn't a fluke. I knew the ins and outs of the deck, what the winning plays were, and with Rapid Strike, I just didn't see far enough ahead with the deck. I think the list was great, and some Rapid Strikes did do well. I think fantastic deck. But I should have just stuck to my guns and not doubted myself and played the deck that I know. Because if I realistically was going to go 4-3-2, I would have been a lot happier to do it with that deck. Because, okay, I hit some terrible matchups. I did what I could. I gave myself the best chance to win. Just couldn't pull it out in the end. These games I felt like were in my control, but I just wasn't seeing far enough ahead. So if you can learn anything from my lack of a performance, play the deck that you know. You can learn it from Dre, too. He played Fusion Mew all of last season and just dominated with it. Why? Not because the deck was great. When I looked at his list, if you're still watching, Dre, when I looked at your list, or even when I played against you in Fresno, I was like, what in the world is this? Like, who plays freaking Pokemon catchers? Nobody played Silene anymore. Nobody played that. Nobody even was playing Deoxys. But he played it so freaking well. And even my friend Andy, he told me, he's like, while Rapid Strike might be the best call and give you the best chance to do well percentage-wise, you should play Entei. That's what he told me before. He said, you should play Entei because you know how to play it. So I was like, okay, I'll take that into mind, but it's self-doubt. Self-doubt is what ended my tournament run. So play the deck that you know. Play the deck you got the experience with.